Everybody, welcome to American Advocates. I'm going to be discussing, just like I've been doing every Saturday now, the latest news on Jeffrey Epstein and just who he was. Unlike a lot of other channels, I don't want to be jumping constantly on the sensationalism that we're seeing posted all over social media when it comes to the release of 3.5 million various different documents. I've discussed previously before, there's a lot of anonymous tips that continuously come in that were put and added into these Epstein files that really do a disservice to the overall credibility of what a lot of people cover when it comes to the files. That's not what I aim to do on this channel. So anonymous tips and third-party accounts and all of this other stuff, I don't cover that. What I do cover are concrete facts when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein files. And I do so using emails, direct messages, and of course, what we already know based off of financial records. And that's what I'm going to be doing today. Who was Jeffrey Epstein? Like this not people can't see the forest through the trees. This is something I've been saying on this channel for a while now. I've made several predictions on this channel that I feel truthfully very vindicated in. Way into early last year, for instance, I already was out there saying Jeffrey Epstein was a networker. I also was saying Trump would not be implicated in any island affairs in these Epstein files. So far, that's true. You can point to the anonymous tip that was included in these files and say Trump's guilty, but that's literally an anonymous tip. We don't know who put that tip in. We don't know anything about that other than somebody wrote that in 2016, coincidentally, and it got added into the Epstein files as a result. You could make up anything and it would have been added into the Epstein files by the FBI. So that's not what I'm here to discuss. But and more importantly, why I've been saying for the past weeks that I don't want to continually be discussing these Epstein files is because, of course, the movement, the information has been hijacked already via AI slop or severe misunderstandings of what's being released. So I've already referenced this a couple of times over the past week. The Ball Bank situation, for instance, complete nonsense, a literal printing error that people pointed to and said, see, that's it, Baal, ridiculous demonic deity. Epstein was worshiping him. It's satanic what was happening on the island. It's like that was literally a printing error, okay? And it's stuff like that where it's like I don't want to make a fool of myself. I don't want to see some sort of document being released where a printing error makes it look like Epstein had a bank called Baal Bank and go live immediately and say this settles it. That's not going to be me. And I'm glad I didn't, because a lot of creators did, and they were out here saying Epstein was running with a bank called Baal Bank, and it turns out that's false, printing error. Another one that I found to be really hilarious, in all honesty, with the benefit of hindsight, of course. The allegations are not hilarious, but now with the benefit of hindsight, there was apparently a 500,000 follower Telegram account that was using this email. This is a great example of why I'm not reporting on stuff immediately. Apparently, they were using this email that was sent from, well, of course, the name's redacted. Thank you, Trump DOJ, for redacting the name of the sender. But it was regarding Epstein, and it said, meet me at a class at 9:30. So many hot girls. Promise. Hurry. New York City. 30 between 6 and 7. Then we go to matcha, okay? Promise an abundant of young, pussy flesh. So people were looking at that, and because it said 30 between 6 and 7, for some reason this 500,000 follower Telegram account that I follow was discussing it in the light of, oh, see, look at this. Jeffrey Epstein was involved, and the people around him were involved in these hot yoga classes where there were 36-year-olds participating. Not true. And once again, why I've been saying all week that I am not going to jump on this information the moment it's released, even in the form of credible emails. This is a real email that was being referenced here, but you got to be careful about your sources. And so what this has turned out to be is there were going to be 30 women participating in hot yoga between, and it was, hold on, it was New York City on 6th and 7th Avenue, okay? 30th Street between 6th and 7th Avenue. Not 36-year-olds doing hot yoga. And so anybody who was reporting on that early on has been made to look like a fool, okay? It didn't even hold up to any level of scrutiny. 6-year-olds can't, there is no yoga for 6-year-olds, all right? So That's the main reason why I haven't been covering Epstein all week. I've been saying that all week. I've been saying I want the dust to settle a little bit before I come on here and I go live and I start discussing what's actually in these files. And then on top of it, I've also been reminding people that you can't see the forest through the trees. Everyone is very focused on Jeffrey Epstein being a pedo creep on an island, but really, you're missing the point, in all honesty. And people hate hearing that. And when I say that, people call me a pedo defender, and I'm not. What Epstein did was outright amoral. It was gross, disgusting, and it highlights a very massive problem in this world. That, of course, being the problem that wealthy, powerful people aren't held responsible or accountable for their actions, and they get away with this shit. But actually, my point of view on this is even more disturbing. And my point of view on this is that Epstein was at the center of a bunch of powerful elites who are running the world, and Epstein was controlling them. And I'm going to explain to you how and why that is. But this is not new as far as my opinion on this. Back in May, I believe, I made a video on this channel. I was only 2 months new on YouTube at that point, but I made a video explicitly stating Epstein is a networker. It was very obvious he was a networker. And when Trump's tone shifted back then on the Epstein files, turning from him campaigning and saying, yeah, sure, I guess I'd release them, to all of a sudden having access to those files via his DOJ and FBI, and then deciding, you know what, it's a hoax, I don't want to release them. A lot of people, no offense, but simps, a lot of you are simps. You know, you don't have to be a simp for women to be a simp. A lot of people are just simpletons. So when Trump switched his narrative on that, they said that proves it, Trump's guilty. No, Trump was never on the island. In fact, all of the reports that I'm seeing that are official ones, where Epstein and his work and his staff are discussing Trump, discuss him from the light of TDS. They discuss him from the light of he refused massages. Sure, he borrowed Epstein's jet. Billionaires loan jets to each other all the time for travel purposes. But the real point here in all of this was that Trump switched his narrative on this to protect elites. And I will conclude that with tangible proof to all of you in at the end of this in just a little bit. So I see views are coming in. Please be sure to like the stream if you're enjoying this. It truly helps the stream perform well in the algorithm. Welcome to American Advocates. If this is not your first time here and you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you're always notified when I go live. Now, here's the deal. Here's the deal when it comes to who Jeffrey Epstein was. And here's what everyone is missing. The dots no one's connecting. Like I said, I've been saying it all along. He's a networker. It all starts, in my opinion, with a man named Les Wexner. Okay, and I remember learning this last year when I really started investigating Jeffrey Epstein, the Epstein files, who he was. Of course, this was before we had any of them released. At the point in time when I was looking into this, Pam Bondi had put out the embarrassing Phase 1 binders. Within 10 seconds, I looked at what the content was. I knew, okay, I've already seen all this. We very likely aren't getting this stuff. Thankfully, Congress forced Trump to act on this. Now we have all of it, and now we're getting all of it, and I feel vindicated. So Lex Wessner, you see, when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, the rumor was he was a mathematical tax genius. Billionaires would flock to him. They'd come to his island to get their taxes done, and in the process, Epstein would tempt them into incriminating themselves with underage girls. Well, that probably actually isn't completely true. That's very likely just a half-truth at best. Epstein very likely was not a tax expert. Epstein, as it turns out, was pretty much just funded outright by a lot of very suspicious, powerful elites and billionaires and millionaires of the world. I actually have an article pulled up here. This is from, well, let me see, New York Times, Jeffrey Epstein Money Scams Investigation. It says, one evening in early 1976, a bushy-haired Jeffrey Epstein showed up for an event at an art gallery in Midtown Manhattan. Epstein was a math and physics teacher, and somehow wound up being a billionaire, mind you, at the city's prestigious Dalton School, and the father of one of his students had invited him. Epstein initially demurred, saying he didn't go out much, but eventually relented. It would turn out to be one of the best decisions he ever made. At the gallery, Epstein bumped into another Dalton parent who had heard tales of the 23-year-old's wondrous math skills. The parent asked if he had ever thought about a job on Wall Street, according to an unreleased recording of Epstein and a document prepared by his lawyers. Epstein was game. The parent dialed a friend, Ace Greenberg, a top executive at Bear Stearns. Epstein, the friend, told Greenberg was wasting his time at Dalton. It goes on to say that Greenberg invited Epstein to the investment firm offices at the southern tip of Manhattan. Epstein showed up in nothing but a turtleneck, but Greenberg was still very impressed with him, even though the young man didn't have the foggiest idea of how Wall Street worked. Greenberg helped build Bear Stearns into one of the industry's scrappiest firms, and it goes on to say that Greenberg was looking for people who were PhDs, poor, smart, and had a deep desire to become rich. According to Greenberg, Epstein fit that bill flawlessly. He grew up in a working-class family in Coney Island. Friends described him as a math whiz and piano virtuoso. And as Greenberg and his colleagues would soon learn, he yearned for wealth. So Greenberg wound up offering him a job, but before doing that, he met with another senior executive, Michael Tannenbaum. His son happened to be a Dalton student who reported to his father that Epstein was popular with students and the school's young female staff members. This was an extraordinarily lucky break for him, the article says. The first of many. This is some of the main points here. TDS streamer? Me? No, not at all. I voted for Trump, actually. But I'm going to explain to you how and why Trump has flipped the narrative, salty spotted dog, on the Epstein files, why he did that back in May. That I'll conclude at the end of this. But right now, people need to understand the context of Jeffrey Epstein and his lucky past, because it's a recurring theme with Jeffrey Epstein. Welcome, everybody, by the way. Please be sure to give the stream a like if you haven't already. It helps the stream perform well in the algorithm. Now, Epstein's lucky breaks, his lucky past, is the recurring theme here. He perpetually and continually finds himself in these positions of luck, these billionaires that just seems to be charmed by him for whatever reason. I mean, he shows up to a prestigious job interview wearing a turtleneck and is still impressive somehow. And they decide to give him a job that it was the equivalent of paying $140,000 back then. Nowadays, he was paid $25,000 a year back then, but this was in the 70s. So Greenberg viewed the man as a young protege, it says, and he invites him to dinner parties, and he meets all these other wealthy people, and he meets Lynn Greenberg, who Epstein wound up dating. One thing leads to another, and it just seems like for some reason, everybody that Epstein is put in front of, he impresses and charms into giving him large amounts of money. This is not how life typically works. So back to Les Wexner. What's important to note here with Les Wexner? Well, first of all, just like Greenberg, apparently, Les Wexner was instantly impressed with Jeffrey Epstein. He said, Jeffrey Epstein, he understands money better than anyone. What did Les Wexner do since he was so impressed with Jeffrey Epstein? Well, he decided, I love this guy so much. He met him in 1986, I believe it was. Just 5 years later, after knowing Jeffrey Epstein and being so impressed with him, in 1991, he decides, you know what, Jeff? You're going to be my power of attorney for my Wexner Foundation. All of my wealth, essentially, you now have access to. I just trust you that much, Jeffrey. Does that seem suspicious to anybody? Because it's fucking suspicious to me. So, and even more so, what's suspicious about this? Les Wexner owns a company that owns Victoria's Secret. So this all ties into how Jeffrey Epstein did what he did, and I'm going to explain why he did what he did. But many people don't know this. They don't know anything about this. All they have in their mind, their simpleton minds, no offense, is that Jeffrey Epstein was on an island and he was a creep and he invited wealthy people there to be creeps with him, okay? Pedos. It's so much deeper than that. So Les Wexner makes Jeffrey Epstein his power of attorney, right? And you can, in this article, this is the same article I was reading from earlier about Greenberg. It says a fateful flight to Florida that year would launch Epstein from a mere millionaire into a plutocrat. With massive estates, 2 private islands, and luxury aircraft. The transformation came about through a new client, Les Wexner, the billionaire who built brands like The Limited and Victoria's Secret. The two were introduced by Wexner's friend Robert Meister, an insurance executive who happened to sit next to Epstein on the plane to Palm Beach. Meister suggested that Wexner get in touch with Epstein for financial advice. Wexner soon had a financial advisor, Harold Levin, fly to New York to meet Epstein. Levin told us that he spent an hour with Epstein in his office and immediately got a bad vibe. He found a payphone to call Wexner, and he told Wexner on the phone, "I smell a rat." And I'm going to get into Epstein and the rat element here and how this Harold Levin guy actually had great instincts, to be honest with you. But tragically, like a lot of higher up number twos or number threes in these companies who know a lot of shit, are smart guys, have good instincts, he was ultimately ignored by Les Wexner. Probably for a deliberate reason, by the way. But so Harold Levin said, I smell a rat. I don't trust him. But Wexner disregarded this opinion. He just didn't listen. And about a year later, he hired Epstein to be Levin's boss. So this ultimately wound up leading to Levin just quitting because he didn't want to work under Jeffrey Epstein. And it's blatantly insulting that this happened to him, right? So Levin speculated that Epstein won the billionaire's confidence by being dubbed a mathematical genius, a tax consulting genius, a guy who understands money better than anyone, according to Les Wexner. Well, Epstein apparently, this is just rumored reports, but according to Levin's reports, this is what happened. Epstein went to Les Wexner and told Les that Levin had been stealing money from the company, and that's why this situation wound up happening this way. And so Epstein certainly could play a political manipulation game very well. That much is clear. But Epstein's name, after being associated with Les Wexner, and after being basically given the power of attorney over the Wexner Foundation and everything else, his name wound up appearing in government filings, or responsible for Wexner's businesses and charities. And some of Epstein's phones had Wexner's number on speed dial. Now, hang on, let me take a sip here. I'll take a look at some comments. Anybody has anything to say so far, but man, if the energy went into finding children missing now, how many could be saved? Well, energy is dispersed everywhere, right? So I hope that happens. Okay. Not much to add in the chat right now, but appreciate everybody for tuning in here. Like I said, be sure to like the stream because it helps boost the stream in the algorithm. So, when it comes to Les Wexner, let me see where I was at here. Yes, that's right. Giving Epstein the power of attorney in 1991, it gave him broad control over Wexner's finances. Epstein had the ability to buy, sell, borrow, and handle assets on Wexner's behalf. And ultimately, I believe there was a case centered around Les Wexner and Epstein where Wexner ultimately wound up accusing Epstein of misappropriation of funds, stealing funds, which isn't surprising. But again, that case wound up being settled out, etc. And Wexner wound up, hang on, let me see, special assets transferred. Yeah. Special assets were transferred from Wexner to Epstein at deeply discounted prices. So the New York mansion, Wexner purchased the Herbert H. Strauss House in Manhattan, Upper East Side for $13.2 million in 1989, by the way. That was when the real estate markets were at their best, and it was still a $13.2 million home. But he never lived there. Epstein sold it to himself in 1998 at a steep discount. The amount that Epstein bought it for is undisclosed, but the rumors suggested a nominal $1. One source claims $20 million, though no public records confirm a sale price. And so this is just the kind of shit that was happening. The private plane Epstein had an Ohio estate that not many people know about either. And all of these assets wound up adding up to roughly $100 million by the late 2010s. But it goes back to the point that Epstein was not a tax genius. This was just an excuse by billionaires to associate themselves with him and network with him. Billionaires don't tend to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to their tax consultants because that would defeat the point of hiring a tax consultant to save you money. So with Les Wexner, it's important to note, to recap that interaction briefly, it all highlights the lucky beginnings of Jeffrey Epstein, who just apparently found himself in these charming situations with billionaires to the point of where they decided, you know what? I like this guy so much, I've barely known him, but I'm going to make him the power of attorney of my entire company because he just understands money better than anyone. That was Les Wexner. Les Wexner owns Victoria's Secret. You can immediately, I'm sure, connect the dots there with how Victoria's Secret was leveraged for the activities on Epstein Island, right? Now, fast forward just a few years after Epstein is made the power of attorney over Les Wexner's financial dealings, 1995, Jeffrey Epstein meets another man named Leon Black. This is another name not many people are very familiar with, but I've grown very familiar with this name over this past day. I have spent the entire day researching all of this stuff, digging through documents, etc. And so, once again, Leon Black, a very wealthy elite in the world, and upon meeting Epstein, calls Epstein a charming and mysterious man. Even compares Jeffrey Epstein to James Bond. I kid you not. An actual quote from Leon Black. So, James Bond-esque Jeffrey Epstein. So charming, so amazing. Well, apparently the charm was thick there as well. So, Leon Black decides, you know what? I'm one of the most successful hedge fund managers on the planet. I need to pay this Jeffrey Epstein mathematical whiz, this incredible tax consultant. I'm going to pay him $175 million over the next 5 years for tax advice. Epstein had zero credentials, by the way, in the tax world or experience in tax advisory. But Leon Black decides, I'm going to fund this guy. You can actually, I pulled up this email that was on November 2nd, 2015, from Jeffrey Epstein to Leon Black. Jeffrey Epstein saying, I never want to have any more uncomfortable money moments with you. I find it very distasteful. So to be clear, my terms are as follows. I will only work for the usual $40 million per year. It needs to be paid $25 million upon signing an agreement, $5 million every 2 months thereafter for 6 months, i.e. March, May, and June. This can happen if I am able. This can begin if I am able in January. I will immediately stop work if the payment is not received. Now, the tone there is important to identify. Jeffrey Epstein working under the guise of being a tax advisor, once again, even though he isn't. But really, he's also saying, I find it distasteful. I never want to have another uncomfortable money moment with you. This is because, once again, like I've been stating, since last year, but especially on their stream and last Saturday, Jeffrey Epstein was a networker and also a blackmailer. This is just the bottom line of who he was. It is so much more sinister than a creepy guy on an island. So his tone here is firm with Leon Black. Why? Because he had dirt on Leon Black, very likely. Leon Black has been set in the center of, I think, 3 different lawsuits with various different women accusing Leon Black of raping them after receiving massages. In the one case, a woman who had autism and Down syndrome filed a lawsuit against Leon Black in 2022 or 2023, I believe it was. So this is just how this works. It's blackmail. That's a blackmail email to me. You know, that's what that screams to me, blackmail. I never want to have any more uncomfortable money moments with you. So to be clear, my terms are as follows. He's speaking as if Leon Black, a wealthy, connected billionaire, can't just go out and find another tax advisor. I don't know about you, but if I was hiring somebody like that, if I went to my local EG tax, which I know Epstein was claiming to be much higher than, and the tax guy there said, these are my terms. You're going to pay me here, here, and here. I'd be like, yeah, I'm out. I'll just find someone else. But Leon Black didn't do that. In fact, Leon Black was loyal to Epstein even after Epstein's initial bust in 2009, where he was going through the Florida legal system over already, you know, child predatory, disgusting, depraved actions there. So nothing on Trump. It was a fucking empty burger. Well, I'm going to tie in Trump at the end because there is something here that you should know about President Donald Trump. But I do feel vindicated for Google's sake. I do feel vindicated in my earlier predictions last year about Trump not being implicated in the files when it comes to, you know, child predatory actions. I turned out to be right on that, it seems. But yes, Trump, there's something I'm going to tie in Trump with all of this to help you explain Trump's narrative shift on the Epstein files last May it was during that cabinet meeting. So that Trump still plays a part here, and I'll tell you how at the end of the stream. Okay, now back to Leon Black. Let me find where I was. Yes, that's right. Yeah, I pulled this one up too. Another email. That's right. From Jeffrey Epstein to some weirdo. This is another email sent, associated with Leon Black, the billionaire, and it's interesting. I found this one very interesting. Now, there's been some, I wouldn't say false, but some very distracting claims that have been made when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein and Russian ties. he definitely had Russian ties, and this email actually points to that to some degree. But earlier, too, even, I think last Saturday, I think I pointed it out that Epstein could have been KGB. I'm now almost retracting that statement. I think Epstein was involved in various different intelligence agencies, but I'm not sure that he was involved with KGB. However, he had deep connections because this email that I find very startling was sent July 24th, 2015. And he's reaching out to a Russian FSB agent. Now, if you don't know what that is, that's basically the Russian FBI. And he's saying, "How are you? I need a favor. There is a Russian girl from Moscow, the name's redacted. She is attempting to blackmail a group of powerful businessmen in New York. It is bad for business for everyone involved. She arrived at New York Saturday of last week, staying at the Four Seasons on 57th Street. Suggestions?" Now, I don't know where this email led to. I don't have anything else pulled up. I couldn't find anything just yet, but that's very, very suspicious. And that's all tied in with, of course, with billionaire Leon Black. It's very interesting. So, Leon Black, fast forwarding just a little bit here to Leon Black. Leon Black appointed Jeffrey Epstein, just like how Les Wexner, just similar to how Les Wexner, the owner of Limited and Victoria's Secret, decided, you know what, I love this Epstein guy. He's so smart, so charming, just understands money better than anyone. So I'm going to make him my power of attorney, overseeing all of my funds. Well, Leon Black did something similar in 1997, just 2 years after knowing Jeffrey Epstein. According to what I have reports-wise here, Leon Black appointed Jeffrey Epstein as one of the initial directors of the Black Family Foundation in 1997. The foundation was established to facilitate philanthropic contributions by Black and his family. So Leon Black outright made Jeffrey Epstein, put him on his board of directors. Les Wexner did kind of something similar. And truthfully, that's what I find the most interesting here. These articles are comparing Jeffrey Epstein, and they're, well, not comparing. These articles are stating Jeffrey Epstein kept getting these lucky breaks, right? Lucky breaks. Jeffrey Epstein was just a charming, lucky guy, just always in the right place at the right time, meeting all of the right people who decided within minutes, it seems, or even if it's only 3 or 4 or 5 years, that's still relatively quick, deciding, you know, this guy is amazing. I got to keep him in my life and promote him to the utmost positions of power to oversee my companies, my wealth, etc. It's ridiculous, okay? And if you buy that narrative for what it is and you only look at that narrative as a face value thing, you don't dig deeper into it, then I can't help you. You're a simp. You're a simpleton. That's really what it is. So what I want to do with all of that being built as the foundation for where I'm going with this is I want to now discuss Epstein's emerging ties with Ehud Barak. Now, Ehud Barak was, I have the information on who he was. It says Ehud Barak has held several high-level official positions in Israel over his career, including both military and political roles. Here's a summary of his key ones based on reliable sources. He was the Prime Minister of Israel. He served in that role from July 99 to March 2001, during which he also held the position of Minister of Defense. Now, I don't know if you've seen the photos, but there is a photo, there's several photos actually in the official FBI records and documents of Jeffrey Epstein owning an Israeli Defense Force sweater. And then there's also a photo of Epstein wearing the Israeli Defense Force sweater on his private jet. So that's first and foremost. He was, Ehud Barak was also the Minister of Foreign Affairs, which he served from November 95 to June 96 under Prime Minister, I don't even know how to say that name. I don't even know who that Prime Minister is. Minister of the Interior, and he was a Chief of General Staff of the Israeli Defense Forces from 1991 to 1995. Epstein owned the IDF sweater. It's photographed on him and in his drawers by the FBI. And Ehud Barak was the Chief of General Staff of the Israeli Defense Forces in 1991 to 95. Coincidentally, when Epstein was really coming up in this world. 1991, of course, like I stated, is when Les Wexner decided to appoint Epstein as the power of attorney over his funds. And then 1995, he meets Leon Black. And 2 years later, in 97, Leon Black decides to appoint him to his board of directors. Okay, so all of this is correlating together. Now, I can't really directly correlate Leon Black to Ehud Barak, but I certainly can correlate Les Wexner, the owner of Victoria's Secret, to Ehud Barak based off of the research I've done and the information that I have. And that, of course, being first and foremost, an email. You guys will remember Pizzagate. Well, this email has emerged here where Ehud Barak sent Jeffrey Epstein an email talking about slicing pizza. So it says right here, RE, head count for pizza. And it says, who all is in the Austin office today who is going to want pizza? We only have one slice, and we need to know how thinly to slice it. Okay? So that's first and foremost. Just want to get that sick email out of the way. Always maintain the frame of what's happening here. It's multifold. I am not doing this stream to ignore the depraved acts of these unaccountable, global, powerful elites. They were doing disgusting shit. Okay? But Les Wexner, as it turns out, well, first of all, I wanted to point out Naftali Bennett denied Epstein's connections with the Israeli government in 2024. I have that tweet pulled up too because I found that interesting. Forgive me if I'm saying that name wrong too. I recognize the name, but he says, as former Israeli prime minister with the Mossad having reported directly to me, I say to you with 100% certainty, the accusation that Jeffrey Epstein somehow worked for Israel or for Mossad during a blackmail ring is categorically and totally false. Epstein's conduct, both the criminal and the merely despicable, had nothing whatsoever to do with Mossad or the State of Israel. Epstein never worked for Mossad. This accusation is a lie being peddled by prominent online personalities such as Tucker Carlson, pretending they know things that they don't. Now, of course, the Israeli link to Epstein is just blatant. Okay, I can't ignore that anymore. I don't think anybody should be ignoring that. You don't see many people reporting on it, though. And it's not just Israel. I'm not here to be a super anti-Israel channel. I'm divorced from the old world on this channel. I'm an American advocate, okay? I like the Monroe Doctrine. I like focusing on America, America first. I don't care if Israel exists as a nation or not. I truly do not. I do not care about any of the Middle East affairs happening there. That's important for me to say for anybody who might be tuning in who's new. I just don't care. America is in shambles right now as a country, and we need to fix ourselves. Nevertheless, when criticism is due, which it is here, I have tangible research being done here, it's important to point this out. Epstein very likely was involved in multiple intelligence communities, and he very possibly was involved in Mossad. So this tweet from Naftali is false. It's false, or at the very least, very likely false. And even if Epstein wasn't directly working for Mossad, he might have been associated with Mossad. And he had the IDF sweater. There's multiple different forms of military defense programs, agencies, intelligence agencies. So maybe at its face value, Epstein never working for Mossad is true. But association is undeniable at this point in time. And what's interesting is back to Ehud Barak, right? The man I was talking about, the former prime minister of Israel, held many positions in the Israeli government. Well, he met with Epstein over 30 times, flew on Epstein's jet, and received $2.3 million from the Wexner Foundation. This is what I wanted to point out. Epstein, of course, as I stated earlier, was appointed as the power of attorney by Les Wexner himself, who had only known Epstein for 5 years but was instantly charmed by him, instantly thought he was a mathematical genius who understood money better than anyone. Les Wexner owns Victoria's Secret and Limited. He appoints Jeffrey Epstein in 1991 to be his power of attorney, which means that Epstein can move all of those funds. He can move the money where he sees fit. Les Wexner trusted Epstein completely with his money. Epstein wound up transferring, at one point in time, donating basically over $2 million, close to $2.3 million, to Ehud Barak for what? Hang on, I wrote down the exact term that they used here. Research reports. That's it. Yeah, in 2002 they did this for research reports. Of course, those reports never really materialized into anything. AKA, this was free money that was being sent to Ehud Barak, former prime minister of Israel, And there's just no way around this. Now, breaking news as of today. This was just released, or this was just discovered, I should say, and posted literally 2.5 hours ago. We have now more access to some of Epstein's 2005 foundation docs, his financial information, where his money was going to. And at the top of this list here, on March 3rd, 2005, Epstein sent $25,000 to what he named the Friends of Israel Defense Forces. There's other names here I'll have to research, like on the same day he sent $10,000 to the 92nd Street Pillar Project. And then a couple days later, April 19th that year, the Edge Foundation, 50 grand, the Stockholm School of Economics, Palm Beach Academy, WNET 13, Harvard. Harvard was receiving money from Epstein. Columbia was receiving money from Epstein. The Jewish National Fund was receiving money from Epstein. The Institute of International Education, etc. And it just goes on. And there's just so much evidence coming out of this and where Epstein's money was going and what he was involved with, that there's just no denying it anymore. And I'm here to report the truth to everybody. This is what it is, okay? It is what it is. Now, back to Leon Black. I did a lot of research on this guy because Leon Black, I can't directly link to Epstein and the intelligence stuff like I can with Les Wexner, like I just did for Les Wexner, and how he donated using Epstein as sort of this middleman power of attorney overseeing the Wexner Foundation to do so, donated money to Ehud Barak. Leon Black is like a different kind of agent in this story, though. Leon Black, of course, similar in Les Wexner in the regard that when he met Epstein, he immediately was just wooed by Epstein. This charming genius, this mysterious man, he called him a James Bond-esque type man. This is what Leon Black was referring to Jeffrey Epstein as. Well, Leon Black, hang on, let me find my place in the notes. I took some notes to keep me on track here. Yes, here we go. Leon Black owns this company, and it's called, let me find it. Is it this one? No. Apologies, guys. Yes, Apollo Global Management. Okay? He owns Apollo Global Management, and while he was the former CEO at the time, that's when he was giving Jeffrey Epstein about $170 million for tax advice over the course of 5 years. Now, the history behind Leon Black and the Apollo Global Management Group, yes, Apollo Global Management, the history here is ridiculous, okay? And this is where I'm going to tie in this whole Trump narrative script flipped and why we saw Trump do what he did in May. Trump was gung-ho about the Epstein files being released while he was campaigning, but then in May decided, oh, never mind, they're a hoax, okay? They're a hoax, and if you want the Epstein files released, you're not MAGA, you're not MAGA. It's like, all right, fine, I'm not fucking MAGA then. MAGA's kind of becoming a cult over time anyway. I voted for Trump in 2024, and I've been happy with a few things Trump has done, but overall, I'm disappointed with Trump from a critical standpoint here, and this was one of those initial moments in time where, I remember distinctly, actually, my good friend texted me, and when Trump was doing this narrative flip on the Epstein files and when he was changing his mind, we were discussing it. And it was like, yeah, this confirms it. Okay, Epstein was involved in intelligence communities, and Epstein was very likely Mossad. My buddy at one point texted me a piece of paper with one word written on it, and the word was Mossad. Okay, intelligence agencies across the world are corrupt and evil. I think that's not even a conspiracy theory at this point. I think everybody just needs to come to that conclusion and understand that. So, Leon Black with his Apollo, what is that name? Apollo Global Management. Leon Black owns that, or he did. Leon Black's origins, this man who loved Epstein and gave him free money, basically. Leon Black's origins are that he got his start with a corrupt bank called Drexel Burnham Lambert, sorry. And Leon Black worked with another guy named Mark Rowan. Mark Rowan spelled M-A-R-C. They worked together at Drexel Burnham Lambert, a corrupt bank that was basically owned by a guy named Michael Milken. Now, in the 1980s, Michael Milken historically became the first non-mafia associated man to be involved in a RICO case over severe financial violations, criminal ones, felonious ones, that ultimately wound up putting Michael Milken behind bars for 30 years. In doing so, this company, Drexel Burnham Lambert, it collapsed. It literally collapsed, where Leon Black and Mark Rowan got their start, okay? But these two would go on to found together the Apollo Global Management Group. And when they did this, they used their built-up clientele and connections from Drexel Burnham Lambert to establish that company. And in doing so, they quickly wound up making hundreds of millions of dollars. How does this matter? How does this play in with Trump? Well, first and foremost, I wanted to point this out. Apollo brought one of the main 9/11 insider traders, a former top CIA official and Wall Street banker, Alvin Krongard, onto its board shortly after 9/11. So it's instantly just shady. But how does it tie in with the Trump administration? It ties in in several different ways. First and foremost, Mark Rowan, spelled M-A-R-C, you can Google it. He's a major GOP supporter, okay? Hang on, I have that pulled up right here. Yes, so according to the Daily Pennsylvanian, Mark Rowan has given over $3 million, or should I say gave, past tense, because it's in 2025, we're in 2026 now. But Mark Rowan gave over $3 million to the GOP causes and candidates in the first half of 2025. On top of that, Mark Rowan also reportedly donated $1 million directly to Trump's 2020 election campaign bid. So he's been funding Trump, he's been funding the GOP essentially with his money, and even just recently, from the reports I'm seeing here, Mark Rowan was appointed to Trump's Board of Peace, this new Board of Peace that President Donald Trump has been trying to assemble. The idea, the concept, in true Trump fashion, as always, I'm a fan of. We need to divorce ourselves from NATO. I've discussed that in the past. We need to re-examine our current allies because they fucking hate us, right? So I like the concept of the Board of Peace. I like the idea of establishing a new alliance group for America that actually loves this country, loves Americans, etc., because our current allies aren't cutting it. However, just like anything with Trump, the execution is outrageous. It's poor, and now the worst case scenario has been revealed, according to this report. Mark Rowan appointed to the Trump Board of Peace. Well, he's mentioned in the Epstein files, apparently, from what I'm seeing here, very likely thousands of times. And Mark Rowan, of course, donating $1 million to the Trump administration, the campaign in 2020 for his reelection bid, being associated with Leon Black and the company, and et cetera. What wound up happening? This is a great example here of what I'm trying to point out to you guys when it comes to Trump and the narrative flip that we saw last May. Well, Mike Milken, the guy who I just said accidentally burned the company Drexel Burnham Lambert, where Leon Black and Mark Rowan worked before founding their company, and of course Mike Milken going to prison for 30 years for like various different financial crimes, felonious financial crimes. Well, Trump pardoned him. Trump pardoned him in 2020, February of 2020. Trump pardoned this guy. So you need to understand how this world actually works. And a lot of people don't. And they can't see the forest through the trees. And this is the bottom line here. And this is what I've been saying all along on this channel. Trump's not implicated in the files. There's no record of him ever going to the island. And there's record of him via Jeffrey Epstein himself, or I can't remember, forgive me for not being able to remember correctly. I've read so many of these fucking files now. But it's either Epstein himself or Epstein's staffers who confirmed that Trump did not ever accept any massages at Palm Beach or otherwise. So it's what I've been saying all along. People are so focused on just the depraved acts of Little St. James Island and what was happening there, but that's really just kind of not a cover story, but that's just the face level. That's just the surface level of what this actually was. And why Trump flipped the script on this was not because he got to look at the files and realized he was implicated in them. He's not. The problem is Trump, a lot of people Trump knows, Epstein, of course, being the networker that he was, therefore a lot of people Trump knows, a lot of people Trump has even appointed that work in his administration even. a lot of them are involved in the Epstein files in incriminating ways. So Trump, as I've been saying, was protecting elites. That's really what it came down to. I remember Speaker Mike Johnson. Vividly saying when the Epstein Files Transparency Act was finally being pushed to President Trump and signed, and how all the Republicans were treating this like a tragedy. And you can't understand why at the time. You're like, oh, I thought Republicans were the good guys. Well, they're supposed to be. Their policies are certainly good, but the people that are running the show for the Republican Party are absurd. A lot of them. And Mike Johnson said it would destroy our entire political institute. Well, here we are. And now it's easy to see why Mike Johnson said that. It's easy to see why Trump was trying to cover this up, calling it a hoax. This is why. And this is the reality that people have to accept. It's hard for MAGA people to hear this. But MAGA is becoming a cult, and you have to understand that. Never place all of your faith in one man. Place your faith in the party and in your country and in yourself and in God. But this is why. So, Trump covering for these people, despicable. In my opinion, should probably be a crime, in all honesty. But that's where we're at with this. Trump is not a pedo. Trump, that third-party account, that anonymous tip of Trump dealing with a 12-year-old and then slicing her head off or something. I mean, give me a fucking break. If you believe that, I can't help you, okay? But Trump is covering for the elites, and that's why this was all deemed to be a hoax. End of story, bottom line. Epstein is so much more than just a creep on an island, okay? Epstein was a guy who used barely legal or barely underage women to incriminate powerful, wealthy elites who he invited to his island, made connections with, introduced people to each other. For instance, he introduced Leon Black and Bill Gates to each other. And this is what Epstein did. And this was the whole point of the island. It wasn't just some sex pest on an island who had a liking for extreme stuff and was a pedo, okay? It's way more than that. Epstein was associated with very likely Israeli government and intelligence, very likely CIA intelligence, possibly MI6. They're having, I don't know if you're paying attention to it at all, but over in Britain right now, London is in shambles over this. Their entire political institute is now crumbling as well. Ours, truthfully, over here, should be, but for some reason, here in America, we are the most allergic to consequences, it seems. And I wonder why. But that's what Epstein was. Epstein was acting constantly as a networker and as a middleman to a lot of wealthy, powerful elites who he would then throw in compromising positions with barely legal or underage women so that he could blackmail them and retain them under his power, basically. Epstein was both a networker and middleman, but also possibly a puppet master for a lot of global elites who would then go on to use their money to obtain positions of power. And whoever Epstein was representing, I can't prove 100% it was Mossad. I can't prove 100% it was CIA. But what I can tell you is it was very likely a culmination of various different intelligence communities and wealthy, powerful elites all together in a disgusting, depraved, global power kind of situation here. These are the people that run the world. Okay, that's what's being exposed here. So don't miss the forest through the trees. That's the point of this stream. Pizzagate is fucking real. Let that sink in. It might be. Some of the emails are pointing to that. I'll take a look at some of your chats now. I went on a super long monologue without reading any chats here, but please, first and foremost, be sure to like this stream if you haven't already. It really helps the stream perform well in the algorithm. Be sure also to subscribe to American Advocates if you haven't already, and turn on post notifications so you're always notified when I go live. He was KGB, strange enough. Not sure about that. I saw the email, but I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about the KGB thing. I think that could be a distraction from what he actually really was. But there's so many files to go through. It's just, and I still work 7 days a week. I have 2.5 jobs. I own a business. It's hard for me to really sit down and do this. I've already spent a lot of time today doing this, more than I intended to. There's so much to go through. There's truly so much to go through. Bannon talks about it. I'll take a look. Bannon's been doing some good work lately. I'm not a Bannon fan, but he's been doing good work lately. I will. Our units. I will take a look at that. I heard, maybe I'll listen to it while I'm working later tonight. I heard that he was going to use ICE to make people vote for Trump again. What are you talking about? This is about Epstein. Who's going to use ICE? What's the conversation I'm missing here? Trump running a third term? Yeah, I'll say that too. The reason why Trump's in the files 5,000 plus times, it's because Trump was a man in a position of power who had a public spotlight. A lot of people show up in these files thousands of times. Not always are they guilty of anything. Epstein had an obsession with networking, acting as a middleman, and trying to control wealthy, powerful people. So, important to understand that. Why has Leon Black not been? Hey, that's a great question, Kenny Powers 55, isn't it? That's the question we all want to know. Les Wexner just owns Victoria's Secret. Whatever happened with that? What's going on with that? What's going on with Leon Black? They should be investigated at the very least, right? And if that investigation leads to concrete damning evidence, then yeah, we should be seeing these people arrested and in prison. But will that happen here in the United States? No. Not with so many people on both sides of our political aisles being so corrupted by this filth. That's really the core problem here, is just the implications of bringing about justice. It would make a lot of these politicians hypocrites to do so because they're involved as well. Bannon talked about, yeah, maybe he does. I've heard, Steve Bannon, I believe, was also introduced to Leon Black by Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, yeah. I have to look into the Bannon stuff more. I don't know. Why are these messages being hidden? Kid Rock is a PDF too. He made a song in 2001 about underage girls and talked about, yeah. Sorry, Apuluzo. That's YouTube's auto mod. It was Cool Daddy Cool. I'll take a look at that song. Yeah, I hate YouTube's auto moderation. I think it's so pathetic. It's so stupid, but it is what it is. No, you get it wrong. He was part of it. I know. I understand what you're saying. I've heard that before. I will take a look at that. R units. He likes them young as I do. What was that about? I don't think that's actually what Trump said. Hang on a second. I think Trump, if I remember that quote right, I think Trump was making a discernment. He was distinguishing the difference. I could be wrong on that. Yeah, I mean, I hate to use AI as my source, but I did Google that quote from Trump. Trump, he likes them young as I do, and it says, based on a search of public records and reputable news archives, there is no evidence that Donald Trump ever said he likes them young as I do. Let me see if let me add, he likes them as young. No, yeah, the original quote is, he likes beautiful women like I do, many of them on the younger side. He was differentiating. That's how I take that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't have good reading comprehension. That's more of a differentiation. Also, Trump said that everyone calls him daddy. Who calls who daddy? So Kamala Harris says out of her mouth on YouTube she needs to decrease population, and no outrage about that yet. I'm not talking about Kamala Harris on this stream. In fact, I probably won't ever talk about Kamala Harris again. There's not really much of a reason to. She's literally irrelevant, and her political career is, it's in shambles. Bannon and Trump were scared of Epstein in the 2016 election campaign for a reason. Bannon said that. Well, I'm here to tell you right now. You can believe whatever you want if your entire worldview hinges on Trump being guilty and of him being a child predator who killed children, according to anonymous tips. But anonymous tips are not reliable, and I don't base any of my information or reporting off of anonymous tips or third-party accounts. Everything I report on has to do with verifiable financial records, currency, where the currency flows, the money. Follow the currency, follow the money currency. That's what I do here, and credible emails. That's what I focus on here. I'm aware of the third-party anonymous tips about Trump, but those are just that. Anybody could have made anything up, and they would have been added to the Epstein files, and that's exactly what happened. A lot of these tips came in, of course, after Trump was elected president or announced that he was going to run for president. This is just the reality nowadays of being a wealthy, powerful figure. You may be up to no good. You probably are up to no good, but also people can make up anything about you. And because you're rich, it's expected to go to court civilly, not criminally, where you settle out to keep them quiet. This is the way the world works. And not even with this case. That anonymous tip about Trump didn't lead to anything. Who cares about her? It's in the Epstein files, or it's in the FBI files, Section 8 and 9. You talking about Kamala? Are you talking about the Epstein files? I haven't seen anything about Kamala in the Epstein files. But like I said, we have 3.5 million of them to sort through. It's a lot, Cuba's cooked. More oil for you. We should just absorb Cuba. All right. So bottom line. People miss the forest through the trees. Jeffrey Epstein, very likely associated with intelligence communities, and what he was doing was far more sinister than just being a wealthy creep on an island, having children trafficked to him for depraved purposes. Epstein was a networker. Epstein was a middleman and very likely a puppet master. That was the whole point of this stream, to point out all of the information that everyone is overlooking because either people are too uncomfortable to report on the reality of it, of what it actually was, or they just don't know. So, and if you missed any of that, go back and watch it. Leave a like on the video. If you left a chat earlier that I didn't see and you want me to read it, you can leave it as a comment when it posts after the fact, when this becomes a video on my channel. And as always, be sure to subscribe to American Advocates if you haven't already. Make sure post notifications are turned on. Thanks so much for watching. I don't even want to say, I usually end my streams by saying glory to America, God bless the USA. But after discussing such disgusting topics like this, I don't even feel like doing that. So have a good weekend. I'll be going live pretty much every day on this channel, so stay tuned for when I go live next. Maybe a second live later tonight, but if not, definitely tomorrow to discuss something. We'll see what the news cycle brings. Thank you to everybody, though. Have a great weekend.